Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this edition of Readings from the Radio and Other Stories by Gil Ndishang. Today we revisit Nkambe. The grandstand was now empty, making the recently painted part interlock with dirt left behind by the previous day's festivities. Perhaps the grandstand, like the nation itself, would have to wait for a whole year for another facelift, the kind that lasted just for the 2 hours of the parade, for the nation to sink back in the old habits of the New Deal. There was a sense of sad beauty about the thick veneer of green, red, yellow paint spread on innocent electric poles at the grandstand on the eve of the National Day. Nevertheless, the scent of fresh paint made you think of the period of Plaster and Paint. Plaster and Paint was the nickname of a senior divisional officer posted to that locality during your days in secondary and high school. He wanted to clean the Orjan stables by implementing a town-wide human investment campaign in which he led by example. He decreed that everyone had to plaster and paint their home, especially those by the roadside. This edict led to an atmosphere of fury in town, for even though the idea was excellent, house owners had other priorities. It didn't take long for nearly half the houses in town, especially those who lived close to the main road, to be marked with the red X sign. This entailed a hefty fine and the threat of outright demolition by the town authorities. Most often, the victims were students, for some would come back from school to find their modest walls sprayed with the awful Passover sign. Some landlords raised the rent and compelled students to pay several months upfront. It was a challenging time for students. That era accounted for a generation of houses that were painted before plastering, for some could afford the paint before the cement. A paste of paint on a bare brick wall, since paint was sometimes easier to improvise than cement, could procure some breathing space in the new dispensation. In another dimension, anyone who lived in Nkambe in those days would bear with the fact that plaster and paint did not only apply to buildings. Plaster and paint coincided with the era of de facto facelift obtained with the help of lotions like Immediate Clear and sometimes soaps like Top Gel. The result was the so-called Fanta Face Coca-Cola Lex. In reality, someone could be black today evening and turn yellow tomorrow morning. Those were interesting days in Nkambe. Thank you.